A very common thing you're going to work with in a database is actually creating reports. This is going to be a way to get the data out in an organized fashion using the access tools in order to help, especially for something if you're going to share it with someone else. Now, when it comes to reports, we have several tools to work with. So I'm going to make a report based upon my speaker and room schedule query. So I'm going to go to Create. You'll notice under Reports that I've got Report Tool, and I've got the Report Wizard, as well as a couple of other pieces I can work with. So now if I just hit Report, that's going to create a blank, basic report, use all the fields, and I'm going to set it up in almost a grid pattern here. And there's some of these things I can then work with adjusting, I can start adjusting my widths, but it's going to involve a little bit more work for you to organize. And it's also just going to be the straight data. So I'm still stuck going through everything. There's no sorting, any of the rest of that that goes with it. Now, one of the things I want you to remind you when it comes to a report is that a report has a couple of parts to it. It has the field of data that you're outputting, and it has what's called a header. Now, what you want to do, if you want to delete something, remember, you may have remembered this from CINS 101. If you try to delete a column of data, the header and the actual data are two separate things. So, what you'd end up doing is if you wanted to delete it, you would have to select the item, the field, and hit delete. Then you have to hit the header and hit delete. And then a third time, you have to hit it and say delete to actually get rid of the space that's put in there. The other thing you can do is you can click in the field and then hold down the control key and click the room ID, the header. And one of the easy things to do is then just to say, just to select the column. Make sure you get everything here, including your footer after that. And then you can hit delete and get rid of it. Now, this is using a standard, just drop it on out, give things, it's going to give you a count at the bottom, your page blank of blank, all the rest of that. We don't necessarily want all of that. So what we can do is we can choose to go to create using our report wizard. We're going to use the report wizard more often than you would say a form wizard. So the report wizard will start up and it'll take you through things. Now I've already selected this when I clicked report wizard so that my query is in here. Remember to add the fields. You can just click and add back and forth. If we want them all, we're just going to go ahead and say select all. Now it says, how do I want to view my data? Well, I'm going to sort it, group it by last name and first name. I want to group it by the people. I could choose to view it by sessions information. However, that's really not going to help me more. So I'm going to say next. I can actually choose to not have it grouped by anything. Do I want to add any additional groupings? So, for example, I can have group by people, then group by date, then group by sessions. But I'm just going to leave it like this. I can sort it, so I'm going to sort it by the date instead of grouping it by that. I can sort by different things, ascending or descending. Now, how would you like to your layout? Stepped is the most common, which is it works with different columns. So here's the last name, here might be the first name, then the information. You can click and see there are other forms that are here. Stepped is the most common. Now, one of the things you need to keep in mind, though, is how is your page going to be oriented? Is there enough data that it's a few columns that you can do it in a portrait mode, or are you going to have to do landscape? Quite often, you will end up having to change this to landscape, make it a wider thing to work with, especially since you've got this option that's usually checked. Adjust the field width so that all fields fit on a page. So what that means is if you have a long field, it will truncate it. It'll make them generally all the same size, which is fine, but if you have a first name, a last name, and an address, well, if you try to adjust it in portrait, it's going to make them all the same width. Landscape is going to give more space for it to work with. And then finally, you just have to give it a name. And then when you're done, you can either preview it or you can just go straight into modify. I'm just going to leave this as the default name. I'm going to go to preview. And click finish, and there's my report. And I'm in print preview. So I can't do anything other than see what it's going to look like, play with how it's going to print a little bit, and then if I want to, just go ahead and print it. Otherwise, I can go ahead and I can just close this, and I can go into layout view, and I can see this and then be able to make changes if I wanted to. I can do things like change my sorting and grouping if I want to, or added a field, change properties if need be. I can also adjust the width of my fields. So for example, I can say my room numbers are all small. I'm going to make them smaller so that I can then, at this point, select these and then just drag them on over. Notice I've got my four-headed thing. I can drag them over a little bit further so that there's some space between date and session. To be honest with you, if you're going to make a report, you're going to end up having to do some adjustment and playing, because otherwise you're going to end up with it running together not optimally for your view. For example, first name, you can move your date column over if you wanted to and try to get some space between things.